Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. B'ezrat Hashem, tonight we will be learning Parashat HaShavua, this week's Parashat Pinchas, Tafshin Pei Aleph, and a lot to talk about. B'ezrat Hashem, B'shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach. We're learning B'ezrat Hashem for the refuah shlema of Kol Cholei Israel, especially Yitzchak Tzvi ben Shli Masara, and also for all those that have been wounded in the disaster in Miami that need refuah shlema, and all of Cholei Israel. May they have a refuah shlema b'toch shel Cholei Israel very quickly, and we should only hear of good news. Anyone who needs to find their zivug, B'ezrat Hashem, should find their zivug very quickly, B'ezrat Hashem, and we should all, B'ezrat Hashem, have shalom bayit, nachat from the children, and only good news, B'ezrat Hashem, all of us and all of Am Yisrael. So the parasha starts off, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen השיב את חמתי מעל בני ישראל וקנאו את קנאתי בתוכם ולא כיליתי את בני ישראל בקנאתי. So Hashem informs Moshe Rabbeinu that by Pinchas doing what he did, he indeed has relieved the devastation that could have happened to Klal Yisrael, because he fought the fight of Hashem. And Hashem says over here, Lachen emor, therefore say to Pinchas, say, Lachen emor, Hineni noten lo et briti shalom. I will give him my covenant of peace. Okay, et briti shalom. So over here, there's a lot to talk about. The first question that the Mefarshim struggle with over here is, why does the Torah have to specifically mention Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen? Why does it have to mention that he's the son of Elazar and he's the son of Aharon HaKohen? First of all, it would probably have been enough to just say that he's the son of Elazar, but we know who Pinchas is anyway. He is a very well-known personality. Why does the Torah have to mention that it's Elazar and also that that he's the son of Elazar and the son of Aharon HaKohen? What's the purpose in that? That's number one. Number two, the pasuk goes on to say that Hineni noten lo et briti shalom. Hashem says, I am going to give him my covenant of peace. Now, if you take a look at the word shalom in the Torah itself, the word shalom is written with a vav, and the Chumashim say it's called a vav keti'ah, which means it's a vav that is cut. It's a cut vav, which means that inside of the Torah, there are different minagim, but some have a custom that the vav has a little bit of a slice in the middle of it. Some have the custom that the vav has a slice towards the bottom of it. But the point is that it's not a normal letter vav. It's a vav that has a cut inside of it, or it's written a little bit short. There's something funny about this vav. So the question is, what is that? Why is that so? What is the idea behind it? So in order to address these issues, there are a lot of different mefarshim that deal with it, and I'd like to share some ideas with you. So first of all, like this. So Rashi again addresses the question, why does it have to mention that it's Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, the Kohen? What's the purpose in mentioning that? So Rashi begins the parasha saying the following, Lefi she'ayu hashvatim mevazim oto, הראיתם בן פוטי זה שפיתם אבי אמו עגלים לעבודת כוכבים והרג נשיא שבט מישראל. The shvatim, the different tribes of the Jewish people were belittling him. They were ridiculing him. They were mocking him. And they were saying, did you see this Ben Puti? Why do they call him Puti? Because we know that he was not only the grandson of Aaron HaKohen, but he was also the grandson of Yitro, because Elazar, his father, had married one of Yitro's daughters, and therefore Yitro was his maternal grandfather. Now, one of Yitro's names was Putiel. It's brought down that he had another name that he was referred to as Putiel. Why is he called Putiel? So over here, Rashi explains that shepitem avi imo agalim la'avodat kochavim, that his father's mother his mother's father used to be the number one idol worshiper in the whole Midian. He was Kohen Midian. He was number one. He used to do all different kinds of idol worship, and part of his job was that he would take the best of the best cows, meaning the fattest of the fattest cows, and offer them as sacrifices to the various idols that he worshipped. So he not only wanted to do the idol worship, but he wanted to do it in the best possible way. So he fattened cows. So the way that you say fattened is shepitem. He took the cow and he fattened it. So they called Yitro Putiel because he would fatten cows for the different gods that he was serving. So they said, Hari'item ben Puti zeh. Did you see who decided to be a big shot over here? Did you see who decided to come onto the scene and kill a Nasi Be'Yisrael, a leader of a tribe of Klal Yisrael? You know what it means to be a leader of a tribe? It's a tremendous status. It's almost like a king. And you go ahead and you kill that person. Who are you exactly? You're Ben Puti. Your grandfather used to worship idols. Not only used to worship idols, he used to fatten cows for the idols that he would worship. So you're going to go and kill a Nasi B'Yisrael. So that's the way they were ridiculing and belittling what Pinchas did. So therefore, comes along the pasuk and says, no. It's not that he's the grandson of Yitro. No. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen. So lefichach ba katuv v'yichaso achar Aharon. That's why the Torah came and specifically said, no. He's the grandson of Aharon. Don't forget that. Don't forget he's the grandson of Aharon. Now, the question that we have to ask over here is, what exactly is the significance of this point? Why does it matter? The fact that he was the son of Aaron, the fact that the Torah says, you should know, he's also the son of Elazar, he's also the son of Aharon. What is the idea of that? Right? Why does that all of a sudden change anything? I mean, we know that he has two grandparents. We know that he has a grandparent, which is Yitro. We know he has a grandparent, which is Aaron. All of a sudden, the Torah says, you should know he's the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron. Why does that change anything? That's a very simple, basic question that we need to address. Now, it's important to, just before we even go there, before we even address that, I just want to share with you a very nice and simple and clear thought that the Ben Ish Chai has on this question. Again, the question is, why does it have to say that he's the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen, he's a Kohen? What's the purpose of all this? Ben Ish Chai says a very nice mashal. He says, imagine you have a king that's walking in the forest, and the king is going together with his head bodyguard. And as the king is walking ahead, the king is all of a sudden attacked by armed robbers. They try to harm the king, and all of a sudden jumps the head bodyguard into action. He takes out his weapon and he totally neutralizes the people that are trying to harm the king. He totally takes care of everything. The king did not give him any reward for that. The king simply went on his way, and they went back to the palace. Okay, fine. Same exact story, he says. And instead of being with the armed bodyguard, he's with his personal assistant, his butler, or somebody who just helps him out around the palace. And they're walking out in the forest. And again, armed robbers come and they try to harm the king. And the personal assistant sees what they're trying to do to the king. He takes the weapon from the king and he fights off the armed robbers himself, and he kills all of the people that are trying to harm the king. The king took him and gave him gold and silver and diamonds and all kinds of jewelry and all kinds of wonderful things. So they asked the king, they said, we don't understand. What's the difference between this and that? How come when your head bodyguard saved you, you didn't give him any gifts? You didn't thank him in any way? What was the reason for that? All of a sudden your assistant does something for you and you shower him with gifts. So he explained, my head bodyguard is trained in martial arts. He's trained in how to hold a weapon. He's trained in fighting, and that's his job. His job is to do that, to protect me. So really, all he was doing was just doing his job. So if he wouldn't have done what he did, then he would actually be held responsible for dereliction of duty. But the truth of the matter is that he did what he had to do. So very good. But my personal assistant, who doesn't really do anything other than help me around the palace, he's not trained in war. He's not trained in anything. So, for him to step up like that and to take my sword, he doesn't even have a sword, and to fight off the enemy with my weapon and to put his life on the line for me, that's very big. So I rewarded him for that greatly, because he did much further beyond the call of duty. So says the Ben Ish Chai, says, if you ask me, I think the answer is very simple. You want to know why the Torah says Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen? I'll tell you why it says that. Because it says that Pinchas was not exactly a warrior over here. He wasn't somebody who was trained in war. He wasn't somebody who was trained in going and hitting targets. He didn't know how to defend himself. He was a Kohen. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen. He's a Kohen. He works in the temple. That's what he does. And he's the son of Elazar, who was a Kohen. He's the son of Aaron, who's a Kohen. And for him to do what he did was a very great thing. That's number one. It says also, Vayako mitoch ha'edah. Pinchas got up from amongst the Edah. Who's the Edah? He was Sanhedrin. He was the group of people that were deciding the Jewish law. He was a very great sage. Not only was he a Kohen, but he was also a great Chacham. So Pinchas, to do what he did, actually was even further removed from war. Not only was he a Kohen sometimes could be a little bit maybe have a little bit of war in him. He was a rabbi. He was somebody who was really far removed. He was in the Sanhedrin. It was very foreign to him to do such a thing. So for him to do what he did, the Torah specifically wants to mention whom we are talking about, that was able to simply stand up to the challenge and do what he did. So that was something very significant, which the Torah wanted to specifically mention, that he did that in spite of his lack of knowledge. He just wanted to do what was right, and he had faith in Hashem that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would help him. And as we mentioned last week, he had many miracles happen to him, and while he did that, he was right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did help him. But still, that's the Ben Ish Chai's answer. But it doesn't really help us with Rashi's answer. Rashi's answer again was that because of the disrespect that people were showing him, and they were saying that he came from Yitro, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, well, remember, he also comes from Aaron. So the question on that is, well, how does that help? They know that he comes from Aaron. We all know that he has two sets of grandparents, and this is what what they were saying. So why does it help now that the Torah is saying that he comes from Aaron? So in order to answer this question, we have to take a step back. And we have to understand, what is it exactly that they were asking? What is it that they were saying? And the Mefarshim say something like this. They say that the people were saying, we know who his grandfather was from his father's side. We spoke about this in the past, that Aaron HaKohen was famous for being Ohev Shalom Verodef Shalom. He was somebody that went out of his way to make peace between couples, to make peace between brothers, to make peace between partners. Whenever there was any kind of an issue, Aaron got involved in the nitty-gritty in order to make sure that there was peace in Klal Yisrael. And that's why when he died, there was such a big amount, there's a tremendous amount of mourning for 30 days, because they lost such a tremendous tzaddik that really meant so much to everybody on such a personal level. And everybody knew that this man was the grandson of Aaron. And they also knew that he was the grandson of Yitro. Yitro started off as a goy. He started off as an idol worshiper. And goyim, unfortunately, and particularly the pagans, are known for being, unfortunately, very vicious as far as blood is concerned. When they would worship idols and they would sacrifice their own children. They had many wars over their different religions, and they were shedding blood left and right. People were saying the following. People were saying that we know very well where this came from. We know that if there are two grandparents over here, one of whom was Aaron HaKohen, and one of whom was Yitro, who maybe changed later on in life, but started off as a goy, idol worshiper number one. If this act came from somewhere down his lineage, we know where it came from. It certainly didn't come from Aaron HaKohen, because Aaron HaKohen was Ohev Shalom ve'Rodev Shalom. So if it came from somewhere, we can attribute this action, this kind of gut reaction without thinking, just to go and to kill somebody without trying to talk it out, without trying to speak it out, without trying to maybe, come up with some kind of a discussion, make peace. No, he just takes a spear and kills these two people. If it came from somewhere, it came from his mother's side, which is from the goy, the guy that used to worship idols and fatten cows for them and was somewhat bloodthirsty. That's where it came from. That was the insinuation. Beautiful pshat. This is a pshat from Rabbi Yisachar Friend. Beautiful pshat. He says like this. He says, this is what the Torah is specifically coming to teach you. Wrong. It's not true. Because even Aaron HaKohen has moments in his life, meaning that although he is somebody who wants peace, who will do anything to make peace between people, but even he, at times, will have to simply stand up and fight for what is right. That's why the Torah is specifically saying, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen. Don't make the mistake of saying that this deed came from his mother's side. Incorrect. This deed came from his father's side. And he explains, quoting the Khatam Sofer, that we know that there are two things that Aaron was famous for, as far as we just mentioned. Ohev Shalom, he loved peace, but he was also Rodef Shalom. Now the word Rodef, many times in halakha, is used to describe a person that is someone who is chasing after another person to kill him. That's the halakha of Rodef, that if somebody is Rodef, somebody else, meaning he's running after him, he's pursuing somebody in order to kill him, the halakha is that you can shoot him. You don't have to take him to court. You don't have to have due process. If you see somebody, God forbid, trying to kill another Jew, then you can shoot him on the spot. There's no due process necessary, because the halakha is that somebody that's a rodef, you shoot on the spot. So Aaron was not only Ohev Shalom, but he was Rodef Shalom, which means that there are times where the way to get to peace is through strength, is through going ahead and showing that no, there are no ways to allow such behavior. There is no such type of thing permissible in Klal Yisrael. And therefore, when what Pinchas got up and did actually was the Aharon that was inside of him, not the Yitro that was inside of him. That's why the Torah specifically goes ahead and mentions that it was Aaron, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron. The reason that he was able to do what he did was he actually came from Aaron. Sometimes, even the ones who want peace the most have no choice but to go ahead and to do what is necessary in order to make sure that there will be peace. And even if it means sometimes to go in this kind of a route. And that was not veering off from the path of Aaron Avinu, from Aaron HaKohen, rather in one iota, but rather following in his footsteps. In a similar vein, this has to do with the question of the vav that has a cut inside of it, the vav in the middle of it. What is the idea of the vav with a? We said that Hineni noten lo et briti shalom, that Hashem says, I am giving him my covenant of peace. Why does the word shalom have a vav with a slice in the middle of that vav, or it's shortened? What's the idea? Beautiful. Says Rabbi Friend, very nice idea. He says over here, we see that there is the concept of a machloket. Let's think about the first machloket, the first argument that ever took place in the history of the world. Or the first time, let's not call it machloket, but division. When was the first time that the world saw some kind of a division? That was when HaKadosh Baruch Hu divided the upper waters and the lower waters. And he said, Yehi rakia betoch hamayim, v'hi mavdil ben mayim lamayim. In the creation, Hashem said, I have to divide the upper waters and the lower waters. Now, over there, when this took place, we don't find that the word kitov was there. However, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu divided between the day and the night, it says that there was light and there was darkness, and Vayar Elokim kitov, Hashem saw that when he divided between the two, he saw that it was good. So the Mefarshim want to know, what's the difference that when it says Vayavdel Elokim ben ha'or ben ha'choshech, that Hashem divided between the light and the darkness, so then Vayar Elokim kitov, Hashem saw that was good. That's very good. But all of a sudden, when it comes to the separation of the two waters between the rakia and the shamayim, so there's no kitov. And we say that, you know why there's no kitov? Because that was the first time that there was any kind of division. Until now, there was unity. But afterwards, there was division, so that's not good. And therefore, the word kitov does not appear over there. Doesn't appear. So then how come it does appear when it comes to the separation of day and night? Very interesting question. So quoting Rabbi Shlomo Breuer, alav shalom, he says the following idea. He says that we know that there's a concept, the Pasuk in Tehillim tells us, ha'emet ve'ashalom mehav, that you have to love truth and you have to love peace. The idea over here is like this, that of course, we love peace. We want peace. We always want there to be harmony in Klal Yisrael. We never want any division. We always want unity. There is no question about it. But there are some times where you do need to distinguish. You do need to divide. You do need to point out what is wrong. Meaning that peace is wonderful. Peace is necessary. Peace is the kli that is machzik bracha. The last Mishnah in Shas says, Lo matzati kli machzik bracha ela shalom. That the vessel that can contain all the blessing that a person needs is peace. However, that blessing is only good, it's only worth fighting over until a certain point. It's not at all costs. If a person has to put aside his beliefs, if a person has to put aside his principles, if a person has to forego everything that he holds dear to himself in order to keep the peace, if a person has to say, well, you know what, why should I make a fuss about something like that? It's going to stir up the peace, it's going to cause machloket. But it was something that's really wrong, something that's very, very problematic. If the peace is going to cost you your principles, it's going to cost you your beliefs, it's going to cost everything that really brings blessing to begin with, so then you won't have any blessing anymore because you're forgoing all of your principles, you're forgoing everything that you hold dear to yourself. And therefore, that's a very big problem. So ha'emet ve'ashalom me'av, you have to love peace, but not at all costs. Not if it comes at the cost of what's emet, what's really true. And therefore, the difference between the two times that Hashem distinguished between different parts of the creation is the following. When it came time to distinguish between mime and mime, two things that are the same thing, so then over there we say, okay, that's a distinguishing between two things that are pretty much the same. It was unified, now it's separated, but it's all the same. There's no real kitov over there. But if you need to distinguish between the or and the choshech, if you need to distinguish between good and bad, you need to distinguish between right and wrong, if you have to show that there's a good in the world and there's an evil in the world, that distinguishing, Vayar Elokim kitov, Hashem sees that that's good. So if it's just the same thing, and you're differentiating between here and there, then there's nothing too good about that. But to actually show that some parts of creation are good and some parts of creation are evil, and you must know to identify what's right and what's wrong, that's Vayar Elokim kitov. So therefore, it's so important for us to understand that you cannot just forego your principles for the sake of shalom. You cannot just say, well, it's going to cause, if me starting to observe Torah and mitzvot is going to cause a little bit of friction or a little bit of tension between me and my peers, or me and my maybe some family members. So then all of a sudden, for the sake of shalom, no, it doesn't work like that. It's not okay, because you have to, what comes before shalom is emet. That's a very important klal. And by the way, in any practical scenarios, always seek guidance from a wise chacham that can give practical guidance. But right now we're just talking in theory to understand what is the concept that Pinchas was working with over here. So now we can go back to understanding what it was that made the Torah Kedusha, again, one possible idea. Why is there a slice in the middle of this vav over here? So the answer that I saw over here is that the idea about a vav, the letter vav, is something that can either connect, it can be a vav hachibur, it can connect two words, it could also divide, it could also be a vav hamechalek, it could be a vav that separates. For example, if you say ze veze, means this and that. But if you say, let's say, makeh aviv ve'imo, right? If a person hits his mother, ve'imo doesn't mean and his father and his mother, it means his father or his mother. Vav could be something that divides. Many times the word vav, the letter vav, comes to divide between different parts of psukim. It's brought down in many different places. So the idea is that we need to know that sometimes the letter vav could connect and the letter vav could also divide. It doesn't always work in the same direction. And that's important for us to know. That's what we were saying before about Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron, even Aaron HaKohen, even the one who loved peace so much, who cherished peace, who did everything for the sake of peace, also had moments where there's no other choice but to get up and to fight. What about the fact that it's not peaceful? What about the fact that it's not pleasant? What about the fact that it's not what we really want to do? We want everything to be nice, we want everything to be comfortable. True, but at the same time, if it means that you're forgoing your principles, if you're putting aside everything that Hashem wants you to do just so that there's peace, it's not worth it. Because peace is the kli that's machzik baracha. Peace is the vessel that contains the blessing. But your observance of the mitzvot bring the blessings. If you have peace, but there's no blessings to contain, then what's it worth? It doesn't accomplish what you're looking to accomplish. And therefore, it's important for us to realize that point. And again, the only way to know in any particular situation, I want to emphasize this as much as I can, the only way to know, practically speaking, whether or not the issue that a person is facing at that moment is something that he needs to fight over, something that he must do something about, like Pinchas got up and did something about it. Is his situation like that, or is his situation something that he has to let go and not make any issues? It's not so clear. Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't be. So you need to seek the guidance of a real Talmid Chacham. But I can tell you that often enough, people are very quick when somebody starts becoming more observant, when somebody is mitchazek, or if he's already very observant and he's as they say, he's steiging. Many times people will say comments to him, they'll laugh at him, they'll put him down. There's a concept in the yeshiva world called somebody being very greasy. What does it mean he's very greasy? It means that he's a very yeshivish guy, that no sentence goes by that he doesn't say some kind of word from the Talmud, some kind of Gemara language, maybe with a little bit of Yiddish mixed into it. He's got a certain kind of payas, he's got a certain talk, he's got a certain look, and they'll say about such a person, he's greasy. Belsky held, alav shalom, that it's so wrong to ever use such a term, because when you say such a term, the person feels now that there's something wrong with him, there's something that is off with him, and now he has to change because he wants to be at peace with his peers. But it's the peers' problem, it's not his problem. Or even in circles of people that are becoming more observant. Somebody might make a comment to a woman who's starting to dress up a little bit more modestly, and they might tell her, "Oh, you're a Rabbanit now, you're a Rebbitzin now, huh? You're covering over here, you're wearing those types of tights, you're wearing this, you're wearing that, you're covering your hair, huh? you're Rabbanit now. So now, again, people are making comments. It's not pleasant. It's not polite. And a person is in a dilemma. Should I maybe let go of it so that we don't have to deal with this every single time, so that there's peace between me and my whoever it is, friends, family, coworkers, whatever the situation may be, so there are no more of these comments? So most likely, the answer will be no. Why should you forego your principles? Why should you stop doing good, positive things because somebody else has a problem with what you're doing? The pasuk tells us, "Vayigba libo b'darkei Hashem," that sometimes a person has to have azut di kedusha, arrogance of kedusha, which means that he's able to stand up and say, "Excuse me, you have a problem with me doing what I want to do, what I think is right in the eyes of Hashem? That's your problem." Everybody has to sometimes have a little bit of Pinchas inside of him. He has to be able to say that, no, I like to be Ohev Shalom, but I also know sometimes how to be Rodef Shalom. I know how to run after, I know how to pursue peace. If you don't know how to be peaceful with me, then I'll make you be peaceful with me. And that's it. Sometimes you need to have that as well. There are moments like that. Because if you don't, then before you know it, you'll find yourself letting go of all the beautiful lessons of the Torah Kedusha. They'll all go to the wayside for the sake of peace. So it's a tough lesson. It's a tough idea to contemplate, but in truth, I believe there's a lot of merit to it. And again, in particular circumstances, in specific scenarios, when there's ever a question, need to address each question with Gedolei Torah, and they will guide all of us on how to proceed forward. We can't just make these types of decisions on our own. Okay. By the way, just another little explanation that has to do with this vav that has a little bit of a either shortened vav or a cut inside of the vav. The Baal HaTurim points out a nice idea. You can always rely on the Baal HaTurim for beautiful ideas. The Baal HaTurim says that Pinchas, we know, according to Chazal, was actually Eliyahu Hanavi. Now, Eliyahu Hanavi is the full name of Eliyahu is Eliyahu. At the end of that word, there's a vav. Now, you'll notice that at the end of the section of the Nevi'im, so it says, Hinei anochi sholech lifnechem et Eliyah Hanavi. Hashem says, I'm sending Eliyah, and he's going to announce the time of Mashiach. What happened to the vav? What happened to the vav of Eliyahu? So over there, the Farshim say that Yaakov Avinu has one time in the Torah where his name is spelled Yud Ayin Kuf Vav Bet. Instead of Yud Ayin Kuf Bet, there's a Vav added to it. That's in Parashat, I believe, Bechukotai. So over there's a Vav added to Yaakov. So Chazal say that Yaakov Avinu took the Vav from the name of Eliyahu as a mashkon, as a collateral, until Eliyahu Hanavi will come back and redeem Klal Yisrael. And at that point, Yaakov will return the Vav back to the name of Eliyahu. So it says, Yagel Yaakov, Yismach Yisrael. That Yaakov will rejoice. Yismach, Yisrael will Yismach. Yismach, says the Baal HaTurim, is the same letters as Mashiach. And therefore he says, Mashiach, that Hineni noten lo et briti shalom. Hashem says, I will send the brit of shalom, the covenant of peace to Pinchas. So shalom is gematria zehu Mashiach. So the vav of the shalom has a cut inside of it in order to signify that Mashiach is coming, because Eliyahu Hanavi Pinchas has the vav taken away from his name, taken by Yaakov Avinu, which will then be returned when he comes back to announce Mashiach Tzidkenu. Amazing what Chazal have embedded in one little letter that is cut off from the other. Okay, so I wanted to share with you one other point, which is, I think, something very interesting. Chazal tell us, if you look in later on in the parasha, this is in Perek Chavav, Pasuk Hey. Over here, there's a long, long list of different names of families This is a new census that's taking place, and there's a long list of names of families of Klal Yisrael. So the way that it starts off is like this. It says, Reuven, Bechor Yisrael. Reuven was the firstborn of Israel. Bnei Reuven, the sons of Reuven were Chanoch, Mishpachat HaChanochi. The Chanoch had the Chanochi family. And Lefalu, Reuven had a son named Falu, Mishpachat HaPalui. He had the Palui family. Now you'll see throughout the rest of this whole list that whenever you have a name of a family, it'll say the name, and then it'll say Mishpachat ha-name. So let's say Yachin, Mishpachat ha-Yachini. A long list of these names appear in this segment of the Parashat. The question is why? Why does each and every name have to say the name, and then all of a sudden it says afterwards Mishpachat ha whatever I? The Yachini family, the Palui family, the Chetzroni family. Every family has the name and then Ha-Chetzroni, Ha-Palui, Yachini. Why does it say it like that? So over here, Rashi famously tells us a beautiful idea. Rashi tells us over here on this pasuk, pasuk A, he says that Lefi shehayu haumot mevazim otam. The nations were disgracing the Jewish people by saying, Omrim, they would say, Ma elu mityachasim al shivtehem. How could these people possibly claim that they come from their fathers, from their fathers, that they are the children of their fathers? Svurin hen shelo shaltu hamitzrim beimotehem. They think that the Egyptians back in Egypt did not have total control over their mothers. And they said, Im begufam hayu moshlim, if they had control of them as slaves, kal vachomer bineshotehem, how much more so that they had control over their wives. So if that were to be true, that means that the people that are born, that these children that are born to Klal Yisrael are not actually the children of these fathers, but rather they're the children of Egyptians. So lefichach, for this reason, Hitil HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shemo Alehem. Hashem placed his name over every single Jewish family. Hey mitzad zeh, he put the hey on one side, ve'yud mitzad zeh, and the yud on the other side. So if the guy's name was Palu, then Hashem called him the HaPalui, the Palui family, which has a hey in the beginning and the yud at the end. The reason being because hey and yud make up the name of Hashem, and Hashem wanted to show the world that his name surrounds every single Jewish family in Klal Yisrael due to the fact that they maintained their holiness throughout their entire stay in Egypt. Lomar, to tell you, Me'id ani alehem shehem bnei avotehem. I am testifying, Hashem says about them, that they are the sons of their fathers. And that's why the Pasuk in Tehillim says that Kisham alu shvatim shivtei ka. Shiftei Yud Hey, Leodot L'Yisrael, Edut L'Yisrael. Shiftei Ka, Edut L'Yisrael. What is the meaning of Shiftei Ka? The tribes of Yud and Hey. What does it mean, the tribes of Yud and Hey? That each one of the people listed over here has Yud and Hey surrounding their name in order to show you that each one of them was indeed pure and they were the families of Hashem, so to say. They were surrounded by Kedusha. Now, that's a beautiful drasha. That's a beautiful idea that we find here in Rashi. Now, the Mefarshim have some questions, though, on this drasha. First of all, they say, the question is, why is it that out of all the names of Hashem that Hashem wanted to put over these families, why specifically the name Yud and Hey? For example, there could have been the name Aleph Lamed, like many times we know there's a name Shlumiel, Gadiel, Refael, right? All these names have Hashem's name in them. Why wasn't it any one of the other names of Hashem? Why specifically Yud and Hey? That's number one. Number two, it's interesting to note that the Hey is coming in the beginning of the word and the Yud is coming in at the end of the word. The name of Hashem, generally speaking, what we know is Yud and then Hey. Why is it Hey and then Yud at the end? That's another question. And another very interesting point is that there's one family here named Yimna, Mishpachat HaYimna. Now over there, it doesn't say Mishpachat HaYimni. It says Mishpachat HaYimna. So Rashi over there asks, why doesn't it say Hey and Yud? Why does it say Mishpachat HaYimna instead of Yimni? So says Rashi over there, because the word Yimna itself, that family name is Yud Mem Nun Hey. So it already has Yud and it has Hey. So very good. So asks the Al-Shich HaKadosh, why then do you need to add a Hey and make it Ha-Yimna? Just say Mishpachat Yimna. Yimna is Yud in the beginning and Hey at the end. Why does it have to add Ha-Yimna? Very interesting question. Beautiful questions from the Al-Shich HaKadosh on this Rashi. The Al-Shich explains something very nice. He says the following. He says, we know famously that the Gemara in Masechet Sotah tells us that Ish ve'isha zachu shchina benehem, which means that a man and woman, husband and wife, when they have merit, when they have peace between them, when they are living together properly, then they have the divine presence between them. How so? Because Ish is spelled Aleph Yud Shin. Isha is spelled Aleph Shin Hey. And when they are together, living together happily, so then together the Yud of the man and the Hey of the woman, together is Yud and Hey. That's the Shem Hashem. So Ish the Isha together, they have the Yud and they have the Hey. Now, throughout our time in the desert, it's very clear that the women took on a much holier level than the men. When the Jewish people sinned by the golden calf, then the men were totally responsible. The women had nothing to do with the sin of the golden calf. As a matter of fact, in the desert by the spies, Rashi brings down that the women had nothing to do with the sin of the spies, which is quite incredible again. And over here too, by the sin of the Benot Moab, once again, the women were totally clear of any sin. So the women took on a much higher role, much higher spiritual level in the desert, much more so than the men. Now, why is this significant over here? The idea is like this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to show over here that the Kedusha that we have in Am Yisrael is the Kedusha of the husband and the wife. And the husband and the wife are represented by these specific two letters, not from Aleph Lamed, not from any one of the other names of Hashem. Hashem is trying to show the world that it wasn't the Egyptians that had control over the Jewish women in Egypt, but rather that there was Kedusha of husband and wife. In order to show that, you need to use the name Yud and Hey, because that comes from the word Ish ve'isha, the Yud from Ish and the Hey from Isha. Now, you then need to go ahead and show that what kept Am Yisrael going throughout this whole entire time was the Kedusha of the women, that the women were the reason that we were able to survive all these difficult tragedies in Egypt and in the desert and all the terrible things that we did in the Zchut of Nashim Tzidkaniyot. We got through that entire time period. Therefore, says the Al-Shich HaKadosh, if you have to put one of the two letters first, you know which letter is going to come first? The Hey is going to come first, because the Hey comes from the word Isha. And therefore, if you're going to mention the name of a family, it has to be, if the name of the family is Palu, so it's going to be Mishpachat Ha-Palui. Ha, with a Hey in the beginning. Ha-Palui. So you have the Yud and the Hey, but the Hey comes first, because the Hey comes from the Isha. It comes from the woman. So that says the Al-Shich is the reason. Now, when it comes to the word Yimna, which was one of the families of Klal Yisrael, says Rashi, Yimna already has the name of Hashem surrounding it. It has the Yud and the Hey. That's why you don't need to say Hayimni. Fine, very good. But ask the Alshich, so what do you need the Hey for? Now we have an answer. The Hey in the beginning of the letter is again to signify that exact point. It's true we already have a Yud and a Hey, but we need to start off the word with Hey, because we have to acknowledge the fact that it was the zchut of the ladies, the Nashim Tzidkaniot, that we made it through the desert, through all those terrible things. We made it through the golden calf. They took the Jewish men, they held them back from doing the golden calf. Out of 600,000, we had 3,000 people that were killed. The other ones were prevented by their wives. They took them and they made them get rid of the golden calf from themselves. And they didn't have what to do with the spies. And they didn't have what to do with this terrible sin either with the Midianites. So therefore, because they had no involvement and in their zchut we were saved, therefore the Hey comes first. Talking about the idea of shalom. This is one of the most important things that we can, I think, say tonight, which is that Chazal teach us clearly, Le'olam yeh adam zahir b'chvod ishto. Person must be very careful with the honor of his wife. Says the Gemara in Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Nun Tet Amud Bet. En habracha metzuya bebeto shel adam ela b'shvil ishto. A person's blessing, whatever he has in his life, whatever he has in his home, his household, all of his blessing comes because of his wife, all of it. Here's a person, you think that he's successful because he went to school, because he studied very hard and he did well in school and he got a special job afterwards, or the guy he bought the right things, sold the right things, he was in on time, he left on time, he did whatever he did. You think that that's the reason for his success, and therefore we attribute his success to his wise moves that he took in his lifetime? Chazal teach us no. The reason for his success, the reason for every single thing that he has is because of his wife. And that's why a person who has the right frame of mind, if somebody has the proper understanding that that's the way that it works, the Torah Kedusha is specifically putting the Hey in front of every single Jewish family over here in order to teach you, says the Al-Shich HaKadosh, that the woman of each one of these families is the reason that they made it through the desert. That's the source of all blessing that they had. So then we have to take that and understand that as well. And therefore, that's why Bil'am Rasha last week was trying to curse Klal Yisrael. And he told the Jewish people, as he was about to curse them, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. How wonderful are your tents, Yaakov. What is so wonderful about a Jewish tent? What is so wonderful about a Jewish home? That he was praising the Jewish tents and the Jewish homes, that Goyim don't have such homes, they don't have such tents, but the Jewish people do, and how beautiful they are. Simple, I believe the answer is very simple, very pashut. When a Jewish husband gives honor to his wife, because he understands that how could he possibly upset his wife? How could he possibly have what to say about the cooking or about how she looks or about anything that has to do with her domain? How could he open his mouth when she is the source of every drop of success, of every drop of blessing that this person has ever accomplished in his life as a married man? How could he have anything to say to her? He keeps his mouth shut and he makes sure that he only compliments and says good things and keeps the shalom, like we're talking about the shalom bayit. So then we can really honestly say, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, how beautiful your households are, that your households are full of shalom, because every husband acknowledges that the source of blessing is his wife. That's the most beautiful source of harmony that we can have in the Jewish household. When a person acknowledges that, he understands that, so then of course he will have lots of shalom bayit in his household, because he realizes that. And that's the message that the Torah Kedusha is telling us over here, that if you want the Shem Hashem to be around the family name, so we need two partners. We need the husband and we need the wife, and they should know that who's going to be first is going to be the Hey. It's amazing. That's from the Al-Shich HaKadosh in this week's Parashat. So I leave you with that, B'ezrat Hashem, wishing you all a wonderful week, rest of the week, a wonderful Shabbat, with lots of peace, lots of shalom, and also the ability to also be Vayikbali bo b'darkei Hashem, that if anybody ever tries to dissuade a person or minimize his enthusiasm for Torah and mitzvot, that a person should always stand up and be tall and proud like Pinchas and say that, no, we're very proud to do what we do. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us all to grow from strength to strength. Chazakim Buchim, have a wonderful evening, and we'll meet again, Bli Neder, next Tuesday night.
Thank you so much. Thank you.